We're working to learn new information in a cruise ship mystery that has the nation asking questions. How did this straight-A student, a varsity cheerleader, a girl with her entire life ahead of her, end up dead aboard a vacation cruise ship? We have some new information on the timeline that the FBI may be working with and trying to get answers about what happened to Anna Kepner. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, before we start this episode of On the Case, I want to talk about our partner and sponsor, Upside. It's a free app that gets you cash back when you buy daily essentials like gas and groceries. Upside, it's easy to use. It's also free. I use it a lot when I pump gas. It also works at convenience stores like 7-Eleven, or if you go grab fast food at a place like Taco Bell. And we are talking about real cash back. So after you spend, money will appear in your Upside account that you can transfer straight to your bank. And here's what you do. Download the Upside app for free, buy whatever you plan to purchase, pay like you typically would with a debit or credit card, then you file a claim in the app and you get money back. So to find out how much you could save with Upside, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on our screen and use our promo code OTC to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. What happened to Anna Kepner? This story is getting a ton of attention right now after she was found dead, just 18 years old, aboard a Carnival cruise ship. Now, we do have some new information from the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner that we're going to get into in just a moment, but I want to talk about how we got to this point. It starts with Anna Kepner. Here she is. She was 18 years old, a high school senior from Titusville, Florida, which is a community along Florida's coast east of Orlando. Her high school now has her car parked in her senior parking spot as tribute. It will remain there for the rest of the school year. You can see it's been decorated with messages and flowers. Kepner's family told ABC News in what they say will be their only interview for now, that Kepner had recently taken a test to potentially join the military when she graduated high school. Her social media shows her as a typical teenager who loves to do TikTok dances and play with friends. And this is her last post on social media. It was posted the day before Halloween on October 30th. The picture with the caption, quote, "You deserve to be happy, but if it ain't with me, then never mind." Now, it's unclear who Anna was with on this Carnival cruise where she died. Now, this is the ship that she was on, the Carnival Horizon, a massive cruise ship that Carnival runs out of Galveston, Texas, but also Miami, which is where this cruise launched from and went to some Caribbean locations from what we understand. This cruise ship, again, this is a floating city. Bars, restaurants, staterooms. It can carry roughly 4,000 passengers. It has 15 decks. So you have a lot of people on this ship going on this cruise. Now, we know that it left Miami for what we believe was roughly a week-long cruise going to locations in the Caribbean like Jamaica, Grand Cayman, Cozumel, Mexico. And we know through her TikTok that this was actually the second Carnival cruise that Anna was on this year. She posted a video in May of this year on a cruise with the caption, "I want to go back." It appears she was on that cruise with members of her family. But again, as far as this cruise is concerned, we don't know who she was traveling with. Now, I did reach out to Carnival Cruise Lines for a statement, and this is what they sent us. Quote, "The death of a guest traveling on the Carnival Horizon voyage that returned to Port Miami on Saturday morning, November 8th, is being investigated by the FBI. Since this is an ongoing matter under the jurisdiction of law enforcement, it is up to the FBI's Miami Public Affairs Office to provide further details. Our focus is on supporting the family of our guest." There are videos on social media that show a body being taken off of the ship on a gurney and being put into the back of an ambulance. Now, according to the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's office, Anna's death was on the day before that ship returned to port on November 7th. The ship returned to port on November 8th. And the ME lists her time of death at 11:17 in the morning. Now, note that that is a very specific time. It's also, at this point, still unclear how Anna died. The FBI hasn't released her cause of death. In fact, the FBI has yet to comment on this case, and they have not said whether they believe foul play is involved. So if this is accurate information from the medical examiner, Anna died on Friday morning, just before noon, and it wasn't until about 24 hours later that the ship returned to port in Miami. It's also unclear when her body was found, what condition her body was in. where her body was found? In their interview with ABC News, Anna's family said that she loved the water, she had a boater's license, she was scuba certified, she reportedly loved spending time with friends, shopping, and makeup. Her family described her to ABC as a happy, bubbly, straight-A student with a bright future ahead. Her family said that she had just taken that test to potentially join the military after high school. Her family explained that she was in gymnastics at a young age. She went on to be a varsity cheerleader. She had so much going for her in life. And so many of us now are just asking what happened. Now, Kepner went to high school at a place called Temple Christian School, and that school has been mourning her, posting tributes on social media. This one, which appears to be written by a teacher, says, quote, "You were a bright, kind-hearted young woman whose presence brought warmth and energy into the classroom. Your curiosity, your gentle spirit, and the way you cared for those around you made a lasting impression on me and everyone who knew you. I will miss you poking your head in my office to say hello," and that turning into a fun 15-minute conversation. "Losing you is heartbreaking, yet I remain grateful for the time I had with you and the privilege of you becoming part of our TCS family. Your absence will be felt every day, but your impact and the memories you created will continue to live on in our hearts." Now, it's important to note that just because the FBI is investigating this case, that doesn't mean that Anna's death was the result of foul play. The FBI says it is in charge of looking into suspicious deaths of U.S. nationals. So, if there is a death on a cruise ship, typically it is the FBI involved. They have not yet used the term suspicious, though, officially in this case, though there's a lot of circumstances and a lot of questions, a lot of mystery surrounding the death at this point. Now, on the FBI's website, the agency says, quote, "The authority of the FBI to investigate criminal offenses and enforce laws of the U.S. on cruise ships, on other vessels, on the high seas, or within the territorial waters of the U.S. depends on several factors, including the location of the vessel, nationality of perpetrator or victim," and again, we don't know if a perpetrator is involved in this case, "ownership of the vessel, points of embarkation and debarkation, and country in which the vessel is flagged." It goes on to say, quote, "Generally, the U.S. has jurisdiction over crimes committed on a ship if the crime occurs within the maritime jurisdiction of the United States and the vessel is owned in whole or in part by a U.S. person or company. Additionally, there is jurisdiction over crimes committed by or against a U.S. national on board a foreign vessel if the crimes occurs during a voyage having a scheduled departure from or arrival in the United States." Now, on its website, Carnival says it has invested billions in the last decade on security on its ships and, quote, "All ships are monitored 24/7 in a state-of-the-art fleet operations center at our headquarters in Miami. In addition to electronic monitoring of all ship systems, the FOC is staffed by technical, marine operations, and nautical experts to provide troubleshooting and problem-solving resources to the ship's captain and leadership team." Now, it is unclear what kind of cameras they had on Anna when she died. Again, the time of death, according to the Miami Medical Examiner, 11:17 in the morning on Friday, November 7th. We have seen some posts by people who say they were aboard the Horizon when Anna died. One woman who was aboard the ship writes on Facebook, quote, "We were hit with the emergency call that morning, but never did we expect to learn of this tragedy." Another traveler writes, quote, "A young 18-year-old girl named Anna Kepner was found deceased on the ship we were on, the Carnival Horizon, on Friday at around noon. As we were sitting in the Havana pool area, we heard the medical emergency called out over the ship's intercoms." Now, we're still awaiting word from the FBI about this case, and we're also awaiting word about how Anna Kepner died. Joining us now to talk more about this is retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. The FBI leading this investigation. First question, because whenever you hear the FBI is involved, I think for a lot of people, your mind starts going into different places. In this case, what does that tell you that the FBI is involved?
Well, they're always involved. As soon as the ship leaves the port, it becomes a federal jurisdiction. The same with airplanes. As soon as that door shuts, the FBI has primary jurisdiction. That doesn't mean local law enforcement won't assist, but it becomes a federal matter. So the fact that it appears that a crime occurred on a ship that was in international waters and it's flagged by the United States, that's automatic jurisdiction for the FBI.
Does it matter as well? And we don't know if there's foul play involved at this point. Certainly it's suspicious because we just don't know the cause of death as of yet. But Her being a U.S. citizen, does that also factor into whether the FBI is involved?
No, because it occurred on a flagged U.S. vessel that was from a U.S. company, so it doesn't matter the nationality. Now, if it was a non-U.S. citizen, that other government would be notified and they could participate in the investigation. But generally speaking, in the Caribbean, the FBI generally takes the lead on all those investigations, regardless of the person's nationality, as long as the ship is a flagged U.S. vessel.
Carnival Cruise Lines, it's one of the big cruise liners people use to go on vacation. It seems like this was one that went from Miami to some locations in the Caribbean, 6 days or so, and then comes back, was on its way back to Miami when the body of Anna Kepner was found. Before we get into what we know, and there's really not a lot that we know at this point, how do these investigations typically work for the FBI, where you get a call that there was a death on board one of the ships? What happens next?
Well, generally speaking, the ship's captain would get notified. His job would be to notify Carnival Cruises' Global Security Operations Center, and then they kick in a whole process where they notify their security protocols, and their security administrators, who most likely are retired FBI agents, and then they would notify the FBI and their liaison. Down in Miami, there's a maritime liaison officer, and then that person would interact with the squad that does these investigations. And then during that process, most likely the security person with Carnival would tell the captain what to do as far as freezing the crime scene until they can get the agents there to do the crime scene investigation, recover the body, and start doing the interviews.
As we kind of piece together the timeline from the outside, we know that the ship arrived back at Port Miami on November 8th, which was a Saturday. And then according to the medical examiner in Miami, her cause of death was ruled to be 11:17 in the morning on Friday, November 7th. What do you make about the fact that it's believed that she died on Friday, yet the ship isn't back at port and her body wasn't taken off of the ship, it's believed, until Saturday?
Well, it depends. The time of death. If somebody was in a medical distress, then there would be a reason to scuttle, a boat or a helicopter to go recover that person and get them to a hospital. But unfortunately, this person had passed away. Number one. Number two, it also depends on how or when they found the body. So they have a time of death, but they didn't get back to the port for another day. So it was likely that they had found the deceased and then they froze the crime scene, because there's really no reason to get back sooner, because nothing's going to change. They still have to get into port, and they still have another 2,500 customers and people on the boat that they need to take care of, and they need to make sure they get off the boat safely. And they also need to make sure that they don't create some sort of panic on the boat by letting that information get out.
Yeah, and again, we don't know what happened, and I'm not trying to speculate that much, but are there cases where if there is a crime that occurred, that the FBI would go out onto the boat before the port returned? Because you just think of a crime scene and the evidence that you might need to be able to take in. Is that something that a crime scene investigator would take a helicopter out to the ship to begin that investigation before it made it back to Miami?
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't know, that might have happened in this case. They may have got out there and did exactly that, but there was no reason to take the body off the boat and disturb a crime scene. So the other thing is there is cases where there's ongoing criminal or somebody that they haven't identified that's harmed several people on a boat. They may scuttle or send out FBI agents to scour the boat if they're looking for somebody, a suspect or a fugitive that might be hiding, that has already harmed customers or people that are on the boat.
And I think of these cruise ships. I haven't been on one in a long time, since I was little, but these things they're cities that are floating. I mean, this one holds 4,000 passengers. It has 15 decks, bars, restaurants, all the activities. What type of evidence can you gather if you're just trying, whether it's foul play or not? You're clearly trying to figure out how this young girl lost her life. What are some of the resources you can get as an investigator from a ship where so many people are on board?
Well, the upside of that is you have a list of people who are on the boat, so you don't have to go out and track down witnesses, because you have their name, their address, their credit card, everything you need to identify these people and then go out and interview them if they're from Delaware or California. Secondly, the boats have lots of cameras, so that's an opportunity to scour those cameras and piece together the timeline of her actions for the 48 hours prior to her time of death. And then, of course, interviewing everybody that would have any interaction with her in terms of her family members, friends, and then anybody that was near that area that could, lend some information on what happened to her.
Because I think, and we don't know if this is foul play or not, but how common is it that you see crimes on cruise ships? Because I would think for the people who would commit a crime on a cruise ship, you're doing it in a place that's kind of this massive city, yeah, but to your point, there's cameras everywhere. They have your information. They're going to be able to see exactly where you were on board this ship. I mean, how often do you see cases that have foul play involved on like a Carnival cruise ship?
Well, I think premeditated crime, like something that was planned prior to the cruise ship, I would speculate is not very common. But when you have that much alcohol and that many people bumping into each other on a regular basis, and I'm sure you've seen the videos on Twitter or X or some other social media about some of the chaos that has occurred on some of these cruise ships, it's not that uncommon. Now, obviously, the cruise ships have a financial incentive to kind of keep the information to a minimum in terms of how often these things happen, but it is an environment that does lend itself to risk, especially for young women, because of the amount of alcohol and the factor in somewhat of an isolated environment.
What's the relationship like between the security, the corporate security at Carnival, and the FBI as far as, they own the ship, and if you're doing an investigation, just making sure that you have access to everything that you would need to solve a crime like this, or if this is a crime, we don't know if it is.
Well, generally it's excellent for a variety of reasons. Number one, like I said before, many of these cruise ship companies employ retired FBI or retired law enforcement in their security departments. Also, the fact that they're flagged in the United States, they have an obligation, a legal obligation to cooperate with the FBI. And the U.S. government has a tremendous amount of power if these cruise ships fail to cooperate to enact consequences for lack of cooperation. And finally, Carnival and all of them, they still all want to do the right thing. They don't want something like this to fester and harm their brand, so they're going to want to get this thing investigated and resolved as soon as possible.
As far as a timeline, I mean, if they have the time of death. Saturday, the ship returns to port. Her body's taken off the port. Here it is Tuesday. Not a lot of information out just yet. What goes into the decision on, I mean, certainly them determining the cause of death would be one part of it, but as far as what information gets out to the public, as so many people now, it just seems like by the day, there's more and more interest and curiosity into what happened.
Well, it comes down to the investigation and what they deem appropriate to release to the public, because they certainly don't want to release information that only a perpetrator would know, because obviously that would impact their ability to prove the case if and when they do have somebody in mind and they interview them, because there's certain things that somebody who committed a violent crime would only know at the time of death, and those are things that investigators would only know based upon their investigation and the review or the medical examination of the body.
If there was foul play involved in this, because it was on a cruise ship, the FBI is investigating, what could charges look like? Are these federal charges that someone would face if you commit a crime on board a cruise ship?
Absolutely, and it goes all the way up to murder. There's capital offenses for violent crimes on cruise ships. I mean, it's basically the FBI kind of turns into just classic homicide investigators, and then they have all the tools and the power of the United States government standing behind them.
What are the interviews like? I mean, how far do you cast the net? How do you figure out, is it someone who maybe saw her at the pool earlier that day and you're having that conversation? I mean, when you have 4,000 people who are on board this cruise ship who may or may not have seen her, what's it like to just go through so many conversations? And there's a lot that I'm sure will lead to absolutely nothing as you're trying to put together an investigation and figure out what happened.
Well, it comes down to logical filtering. I mean, they're going to find out where she was, her timeline based upon her phone possibly, as well as the camera, as well as her entourage, the people that were around her. And then from there, they would start stepping and going further and further out of her circle, as well as there'll probably be people calling in leads to the authorities, as well as to employees of Carnival Cruise Lines. And then, of course, you're going to interview the employees that were on the boat when this happened, who may or may not have some information about what happened to her.
And I know there's going to be a lot of kind of looking into her background, seeing what was going on in her life. It hasn't been disclosed yet who she was traveling with, if anybody on board this trip. She's obviously 18, so she's an adult, but was still in high school. Just what's it like as an agent, because you're trying to figure out what happened and you're investigating something serious, but you also have this girl's family who's incredibly concerned, sad, heartbroken. How do you go about a conversation with them and keeping them informed, but also at the same time trying to figure out what was going on in her life at the time that she passed away?
Well, there is the FBI has a victim witness group that would be a help, that would assist with these investigations as far as helping out with the interacting with the victims and the victim's family. Then also the agents would have to demonstrate some compassion when they're talking to family members, to make sure that they understand that they're going through a tremendously stressful time, and they want to make sure that they understand where they're coming from, but they also have to have a commitment to finding the facts.
Yeah, and we'll see where this case heads next. Retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt, it's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for talking with us about this one.
Thank you.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.